Listen closely, my beloved, and let me tell you about salt, small, plain, ordinary salt, the grain of the earth that carries within it a lesson for our souls and a weapon for our dignity. For when the world would wound us, when hands of spite reach for our life, when tongues sharpen into knives, there is a humble, holy alchemy in the way we use our salt. We do not fling it to injure, we cast it to cleanse, we do not use it to curse, we use it to keep our hearts from rotting with bitterness. We use it to season truth, until the lie cannot swallow it. Salt is simple and patient, it waits in the shaker and in the soil, it waits in the kitchen and in the sea, it waits like faith that, while it may be unseen, is always present. If you would see your enemies fall to their knees, if you would watch those who would harm you come to a place of shame and repentance, you do not become like them, you become salt. You preserve yourself against decay, you anchor yourself against their storms. You become the kind of presence so pure, so honest, so unyielding in virtue that malice cannot abide in the same room. This is not vengeance, this is transformation. When we learn to season our lives with clarity, boundaries, prayer, and unshakable self-respect, the effect is as miraculous as the sea itself. The tide turns, and those who sought to drown us find themselves stranded on the shore of their own conscience. Do not imagine I advise petty tricks or childish enchantments, I speak of a finer art. The art of being unassailable without becoming cruel. The first way to use salt is to salt your mouth with silence. When the gossip comes like flies, when the insults climb like ivy upon your reputation, close your lips and let the salt of silence lay a crust over the wound. There is power in not feeding the fire. When you reply quickly, you give life to the venom. When you stay quiet, you let the venom dry and fall away. Salt your mouth with silence and watch how the accusers are frustrated into self-exposure. They will speak more loudly to fill the silence, and in their louder speech they will reveal what their smallness hides. Silence seasoned with dignity is not cowardice. It is a kingdom of restraint. It says, I will not surrender my temper to your cruelty. I will not barter my peace for your amusement. The salt of silence preserves the truth, and truth, when left to settle, will become visible to those who have eyes to see. Let silence be your first prayer and your first shield. The second way is to salt your feet with steady movement. Do not be rooted like a weed in soil too poor to nourish you. Walk on step by step, salted by purpose. Every step you take is a line written into the ledger of your life. Make it a line of courage. When enemies shout, step forward. When they jeer, step forward still, not to fight but to fulfill your destiny. Salted feet refuse to be paralyzed by fear. They will take the long road to victory rather than the quick road to a shameful retort. There is a trembling in the air when a person keeps walking, when their march is measured by hope and action. The crowd watches and wonders where the fuel for such movement comes from, and often the wonder turns into alarm. You cannot be shaken by every storm if your feet remember the taste of the salt of resolve. Walk on, and allow their loudness to drown itself in the distance between you. Salt your hands with work. Honest, diligent, uncompromising work. Let your hands be busy with the creation of beauty, with the mending of the broken, with the building of the good. Labor that is pure and purposeful is a kind of spiritual salt. It seasons the mind, it cures the soul of cowardice, and it draws to itself a kind of gravity that leaves no room for petty malice. When you labor with excellence, enemies have less room for slander because your work shouts in a language they cannot distort. A hand that creates is a hand that cannot be easily mocked. The sculpture of your life, the music of your days, the generosity of your action will be testimony against the smallness of those who would diminish you. Salt your hands with work and watch them, who plotted to see you fail, stand by in bewilderment as the evidence of your faithfulness piles up like grain in a harvest. Salt your heart with mercy. This may surprise you. The world teaches us to answer cruelty with cruelty, revenge with revenge, and yet mercy is the most searing salt of all. It stings first and then heals. Mercy does not mean forgetting. It does not mean allowing continued abuse. It does not mean you must invite the same knife into your ribs. Mercy is the recognition that what wins another is often their own wound, and compassion refuses to be cheap. When you pepper your heart with the salt of mercy, your enemies will taste the bitterness of their own actions reflected in your compassion. They will be astonished to find you unconsumed by hate, and in that astonishment there is the chance for their conscience to wake. Mercy is not weakness. Mercy is an iron will wrapped in silk. It says, I will not allow you to crush my humanity and call it victory. I will not trade my dignity for the satisfaction of seeing you suffer. When a heart is merciful, even the most hardened faces sometimes crumble and cry for mercy themselves, because mercy is an invitation to reckon with the shame we hide. Salt your mind with truth. Make your thoughts crystalline. Let there be no murk where deceit may breed. When confronted by lies, answer with facts, with testimony, with a life lived so transparent that falsehood cannot find purchase. We are often tempted to respond with the same cunning we see in others, but salt sharpens the intellect and clarifies intention. You will find that when your mind is seasoned by truth, the world begins to notice a certain invincibility. not of force, but of light. Lies cannot stand long in the presence of someone who speaks plainly and works honestly. So often the enemies we fear are weapons against illusions we hold about ourselves. Salt your mind with truth and watch those illusions dissolve until there is nothing left for the enemy to exploit. Salt your soul with prayer and praise. This is the deep and secret salt, the salt that communicates with the unseen currents of mercy and justice. There is a sweetness in prayer that seasons sorrow until it is bearable and purposeful. Praise is salt for the spirit because it remembers the good and does not let the bad become the whole story. When you lift your voice in gratitude amid trial, you are doing a sacred thing. You are reordering the cosmos around your life by affirming who you are in the sight of the Almighty. There are enemies who pray themselves into madness. Their prayers are empty and serve only their own aggression. But your prayer, seasoned with humility and unyielding faith, becomes a river that erodes even the hardest stone. It wears down the mechanics of malice with a persistent tenderness that is astonishing in its power. Prayer does not always change the other person. Sometimes it changes you. And in changing you, it changes the entire battlefield. Salt your boundaries with firm, calm lines. There are people who will take from you unless you say no. There are those who will cross into your life like thieves if you leave the door open. Salt your boundaries so that the door is shut not in anger but in wisdom. This is a protective salt, not of bitterness but of preservation. Boundaries are not punishment. They are the architecture of a life that intends to flourish. When you explain your boundaries once, and then hold them quietly and consistently, you demonstrate a character that is hard for predators to snack upon. Those who thought they could feast on you will find the pantry locked, and often they will cry for mercy because hunger is an honest teacher. You will find, too, that your own spirit will breathe more freely. There is a holiness in limits when those limits are drawn by someone who values themselves. Salt your speech with grace and clarity. Let your words be measured as a harvest is measured. Do not scatter them like seed on the pavement. Speak so that even in anger your words are like salt applied with intention. They sting where they must sting to expose rot, but they heal where healing is possible. There are many voices that will seek to drown you in noise. Learn to speak so that the ear that hears you understands. A word thrown in haste is like salt spilled on a wound without care. It burns and leaves scars. A word spoken with deliberation seasons the wind into health. You cannot control how your enemy hears you, but you can certainly choose how you address them. Choose words that carry dignity, not degradation. Choose phrases that teach rather than simply punish. Do not forget to salt your humor with humility. Laughter is a salt that softens the most bitter day and confounds the most rigid foe. To laugh at your own foibles is not to sink into prideless self-ruin. It is to show that you are larger than your smallest mistakes. Enemies who would delight in your shame find themselves disarmed when you can smile in truth. Humor seasoned with humility says, I know my faults and I am still moving forward, and that knowledge is more combustible than any malice they can manufacture. There is a power in lightness, not in denying pain, but in refusing to be dominated by it. Salt your community with loyalty and honesty. Surround yourself with those who will tell you the truth in love, who will stand when your enemies say stand down, who will clothe you with courage when your arms feel empty. A community salted with faithfulness is a fortress against the onslaught of those who would see you fail. There are many who will applaud your misfortune and few who will hold your hand through the long night. Cultivate those few and salt them with gratitude. When an enemy stands to gloat, a circle of the faithful stands like a ring of salt, unbroken and shining. Their presence will often cause the enemy to recede not by force, but by the unshakable solidarity that says, you will not break us so long as we hold one another. And remember always to salt your past with forgiveness, because there is a fossilized poison in grudges that will only fossilize you. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Do not be mistaken. It is the process of setting down the heavy stones you have carried, stone by etching stone, until your back is free to carry the seeds of a new life. When you forgive, you do not invite harm, you disarm its power over your days. Sometimes your enemies will never apologize. Sometimes they will never change. Forgiveness is not a ticket to their absolution, but a passport for your own journey onward. It is one of the purest salts. It cleanses the wound and allows the scar to become a story rather than a prison. In the quiet aftermath of forgiveness, you will find that the person who harmed you has been returned to the smallness from which they came, and you, having forgiven, stand tall in a manner that draws even the hardest heart to see their own excess of shame. Now you may ask, will they cry for mercy instantly? The truth is, I will not promise a theater of instant spectacle, for life is not a magic act but a moral climate. Yet you will see change, and often that change comes sooner than you imagine, because the human heart is a creature of mirrors. Confronted with the unexpected dignity of its target, it often recoils into shame, and shame can become the midwife of repentance. You may not hear the weeping of contrition at once, but you will hear it in the way their voices lower, in the way their boldness finds less oxygen. Sometimes repentance is private. Sometimes it comes as quiet apology. Sometimes the mercy you offered is returned through a changed behavior years later. Do not be impatient for spectacle. Seed your life with salt and tend it with patience, and allow the slow seasons to do their work. Hear me when I say using salt against your enemies is a discipline of the soul, not a trick of the tongue. You will not be lesser for choosing this path, you will instead become more. The salt teaches temperance and taste. It teaches the economy of response. It teaches that when you refuse to be dragged down to the swamp of spite, you compel the swampland to reveal its mosquitoes and mud. There is a certain irresistible shame that descends upon those who would take pleasure in harming another, only to find that their target is more holy in restraint than they are in their assault. People will often test you to learn whether you are for real. Let them test you. Stand still. Be salted by conviction and by love, and you will see how quickly the mocker's laughter becomes hollow. So go now and salt your life. Put salt in your silence when the clamoring will eat you alive. Put salt in your tread so your steps are steady on the long road. Salt your hands at work and let them create testimonies the world cannot deny. Salt your heart with mercy so that you may be a mirror, not a sword, and give them a chance to find themselves. Salt your mind with truth, your soul with prayer, your boundaries with firmness, your speech with grace, your humor with humility, your community with loyalty, and your past with forgiveness. You will not likely watch a single dramatic moment in which your enemy falls to their knees and begs in a cloud of sudden contrition, though heaven sometimes does produce such scenes. But you will watch something more reliable, a steady rearrangement of the world around you, a quiet accounting that the universe keeps in its ledger, a justice that is not always visible but is always true. The salt you use will preserve your life, not ruin another's. It will render you a witness to your own nobility. In the end, remember this: salt is salt because of what it does by itself and because of what it preserves. It does not brag, it does not boast, it simply does its work. Be like salt. Do your work well. Do not stoop to cruelty. Do not catch a sickness of the heart that imitates those you condemn. Keep your hands clean by keeping your spirit seasoned in righteousness. When your enemy stands before you, let them see a woman or a man who has been refined, not ruined by affliction. Let them see someone whose dignity has been salted so thoroughly that there is no place left for their poison. Let their hearts be pricked by the sudden truth that the person they sought to break has instead grown into a great altar of endurance. When you are salt, you are not small, you are essential. When you are salt, you are needed by life itself. When you are salt, mercy follows, and even the hardest hearts may one day cry for the very mercy they once denied. So be salted, be patient, be brave, and let the world see that the most devastating power against enemies is not to make them suffer, but to make them see themselves in the mirror of your unassailable grace. And if I may, let me take you deeper still, because the lesson of salt is not a shallow lesson, nor is it a single word of encouragement meant for one fleeting hour. It is an eternal rhythm, a song as old as the ocean, and if you allow it to run through your spirit, it will shape the very foundation of your life. Salt is covenant, salt is survival, salt is strength. When storms rage, when betrayals cut you open, when shadows press at your back, remember that the earth itself has always leaned on salt. Cattle will walk miles to find a lick of it. Seas will cradle it until the waves themselves taste of permanence. Our bodies hold it in our blood, in our sweat, in our tears. Do you see? Even your tears are salted, and that is no accident. The design of your sorrow was made so that every drop falling from your eyes carried within it the reminder that pain can preserve you, that grief itself can cleanse you. You are not a victim when you cry, you are seasoning your soul, keeping it from decay. And your enemies, those who mocked your weeping, those who celebrated your trials, will one day understand that every tear you shed was a testimony being written against them. They thought you were drowning, but you were brining yourself into strength, preserving yourself with sorrow until your time of sweetness arrived. There is a secret truth: my beloved salt is most powerful in the unseen places. You do not always see it working, but you always taste its presence. You may not see how your restraint is reshaping the story, but it is. You may not see how your silence is echoing louder than their clamor, but it is. You may not see how your prayers, whispered in the darkness, are unraveling knots of wickedness that men cannot untee, but they are. Salt is subtle, but it cannot be denied. So do not despair when you do not see the fruits of your salted living immediately. Do not throw away the shaker because the stew does not taste right yet. Wait, give it time. Allow the seasoning to seep into every fiber of your life, and then watch. For the taste will change. Those who scorned you will come to your table, thinking they will consume you, and instead they will taste truth. And truth has a flavor you cannot ignore. It burns and it heals all at once. It humbles even the arrogant tongue. They will be undone not by your violence, but by your flavor. The world has always misunderstood power. It has always believed that force is the greatest weapon, that shouting is stronger than silence, that fists are mightier than patience, that cruelty carves the deepest marks. But salt teaches another way. It teaches that the strongest thing is not the loudest, but the one that lasts. Noise dies, force fades, fire burns itself out, but salt remains. It remains when kingdoms fall. It remains when enemies tire. It remains when your bones are weary, still carrying the story of who you are. The wise know this, and so they keep their spirits salted with discipline, with love, with integrity. When the world throws its weapons, the salted soul endures, and enemies faced with endurance will one day bow. They will bow because they cannot understand how you are still standing. They will bow because they cannot understand how you did not answer venom with venom. They will bow because they cannot understand why your laughter still echoes in the hall where they hoped your cries would linger. And in that bowing, whether it be a literal plea for forgiveness or the silent shame in their eyes when they cannot look at you, there is the victory you sought. Not revenge, not the satisfaction of their ruin, but the confirmation that you have won the higher battle, the battle to remain human, wholly whole. Now I must tell you, do not mistake salt for sweetness. It is not sugar, it is not honey, and it does not flatter. Salt is honest, it stings when it must, it exposes infection, it calls forth tears. Sometimes your enemies will cry not because they are truly sorry, but because the salt you have become reveals the rawness of their own wounds. Do not let that confuse you. Tears are not always repentance, but they are always a sign that something has been touched. Some will be healed by that sting, and some will only grow angrier. Your work is not to determine which is which. Your work is to remain salt no matter the response. Be steady, be steadfast, be consistent. And in time, those who must fall away will fall, and those who must rise with you will rise. Salt never loses its nature. Only those who taste it decide how to respond. You may feel weary. I know, child. I know what it is to endure enemy after enemy, to feel like your life has become one long battle. I know the temptation to throw away dignity and strike back with their own weapons. I know how exhaustion whispers, what good is this salt? What good is this patience? And yet, even in that despair, remember that the sea is salt water, and still it sings. Remember that the desert is salted earth, and still flowers bloom when rain comes. Remember that you too are preserved by salt. Your tears, your blood, your sweat, you are still here. That means the salt has worked. You may be bruised, but you are not spoiled. You may be scarred, but you are not rotten. Your enemies have not consumed you. That alone is victory. That alone is testimony. Sometimes the greatest triumph is simply standing, salted and steadfast, when they expected you to be gone. Do not think the lesson ends with you alone. The salt in your life seasons others too. When your child watches you hold your peace instead of lashing out, they learn. When your friend sees you continue walking despite mockery, they learn. When your community watches you labor faithfully despite sabotage, they learn. You are teaching more than you know. You are salting the world around you, and the taste of your integrity lingers on every tongue that has touched your presence. Even your enemies, yes. Even they are learning. They may resist, they may fight it, they may spit it out, but the salt is still there working. And sometimes long after the battle is done, long after you have forgotten the pain they caused, that same enemy will remember the taste of your dignity, and it will haunt them into humility. That is how the salted live. They are remembered not for their anger, but for their flavor. They are remembered not for vengeance, but for virtue. And what greater legacy can you leave than that? So lift your head. Lift it high, salted soul. Let them see in your eyes the reflection of a person who refused to rot, who refused to spoil, who refused to let bitterness define them. Walk into your days as though every step carries the weight of oceans, as though every breath carries the flavor of seas, as though every word you speak is seasoned for eternity. For it is, you are not small, you are not forgotten, you are not a victim of their cruelty, you are salt, and salt is the very thing that keeps the earth alive. Be bold enough to live as salt. Be humble enough to accept that sometimes salt stings. Be wise enough to know that in the end, the stinging turns into healing. And trust that one day, maybe soon, maybe far, those who wounded you will stand in the presence of your preservation and cry, mercy. And whether you hear it on their lips or only feel it in the weight of their silence, you will know that you have prevailed. And when you come to that knowing, let your heart be still. Do not gloat, do not crow. Do not lower yourself by dancing on their ruin. Stand still, seasoned, and let grace speak louder than triumph. For the real victory is not that they cry for mercy, but that you never stop being salt. And the earth, the heavens, and the generations yet unborn will thank you for it. And yet, child of endurance, the story is still not finished. For the salt we speak of is a river, and a river does not end simply because the shore believes it has reached its limits. The salt of your life continues to flow deeper and wider, shaping valleys, cutting through stone, teaching mountains to bow. It is not just about silencing enemies or watching them crumble. It is about shaping you into something immovable, something eternal, something that no storm can wash away. Salt is the proof that even the smallest grain can change the course of the greatest tide. And so you must understand that the power within you is not in grand displays or in thunderous acts of revenge, but in the quiet, unshakable seasoning of your soul that cannot be stripped away, no matter who rises against you. There will be nights when the salt feels heavy, when your tears have salted your pillow until sleep tastes like sorrow, and you may wonder if this path of restraint, of mercy, of dignity is worth the wait. Do not be deceived by weariness. Salt has always been heavy. Soldiers were once paid in it. Kingdoms traded fortunes for it. Oceans carry billions of tons of it. And yet it was never considered a burden but a treasure. Your heaviness is proof of your worth. Your tears are proof of your preservation. When the load feels unbearable, remember that salt itself does not diminish. It does not vanish with the passing of time. It lingers, steadfast, unyielding. And so too will your spirit linger, beyond the mockery, beyond the harm, beyond the schemes of those who thought themselves stronger. You carry a treasure, and the treasure will carry you. Enemies, my dear, are teachers dressed in the garments of thieves. They come to steal, but they leave behind lessons they did not intend to give. Every betrayal teaches you discernment. Every insult teaches you patience. Every abandonment teaches you resilience. They believe they are writing the story of your downfall, but unknowingly they are editing themselves out of the chapters of your greatness. And when you season each lesson with salt, the salt of prayer, the salt of reflection, the salt of mercy, the bitter taste of their betrayal transforms into nourishment for your future. You do not rot, you ripen. You do not spoil, you strengthen. And in this way, the very ones who sought your destruction become the unknowing midwives of your destiny. They will watch, bewildered, as the fire they set against you turns into the warmth of your rise, as the pit they dug becomes the foundation for your palace. That is the power of salt. It preserves even what the world meant to decay. Do not forget, my beloved, that salt is not only for preservation, it is for flavor. Life without salt is bland, tasteless, unbearable. And you, with your scars, your wisdom, your endurance, are the salt that gives life its richness. You may not see it now, but every trial you endure, every enemy you overcome without losing your dignity, is flavor added to the meal of your existence. People will sit at the table of your story and taste courage. They will taste forgiveness. They will taste resilience. They will taste the sharpness of pain and the sweetness of survival. And they will be nourished. You will become the seasoning for their own journeys, and they will rise because of the taste of your testimony. This is why you cannot lose heart. This is why you must continue. The world is hungry for lives that taste of integrity. The world is starved for the flavor of souls that did not surrender to bitterness. You are not only preserving yourself, you are feeding generations yet unborn. And what of those enemies who still laugh, who still strike, who still breathe venom with every word? Do not think their laughter is proof of their strength. A man may laugh even as his house burns, but the fire still consumes. They laugh because they cannot understand you. They laugh because they cannot bear the mirror of your silence, your steadfastness, your refusal to match their cruelty. And though their laughter sounds like victory, it is often the trembling sound of fear disguised. They know not what to do with someone who will not fall, someone who will not curse, someone who walks salted and steady through the valley they dug. Let them laugh. Salt has outlasted empires, it will outlast their mockery too. In time their laughter will grow hollow, and they will taste the bitterness of their own cruelty. And whether they admit it aloud or bury it deep in their hearts, they will know that they were wrong. That knowing is its own cry for mercy. But hear me well, salt demands responsibility. Do not squander it. Do not waste it on vengeance disguised as justice. Do not fling it carelessly, thinking it will season anyone without intention. Salt must be applied with wisdom, with care, with love. Too little and the world remains bland, too much and it becomes bitter. You must learn the measure, when to speak and when to stay silent, when to walk away and when to stand still, when to forgive and when to set a boundary. This is the art of the salted life. To know that your power is not in brute force but in the delicate, intentional placing of your essence where it matters most. Do not exhaust yourself trying to salt every situation, every person, every enemy. Salt what is yours. Salt what belongs to your path, and let the rest remain unsavored, for not every battle is yours to fight, and not every enemy is yours to answer. Choose wisely, and your salt will remain potent for years to come. The ancients knew this truth. They sealed covenants with salt. They offered sacrifices with salt. They preserved the holiest offerings with it, because they understood that salt was not just a substance but a symbol of permanence, of loyalty, of purity. And so it is with you. Every act of restraint, every step of dignity, every whispered prayer is a covenant you are making with your higher self, with your Creator, with the universe itself. A covenant that says, I will not be moved. I will not be spoiled. I will not be dragged into the mud of vengeance. I will be salt. And in that covenant lies the unshakable truth that the enemies who seek your downfall are not only fighting you, they are fighting the eternal rhythm of creation itself. And no one has ever won that battle. So I urge you, stand taller, walk steadier, pray deeper, speak wiser, love fiercer, work harder, forgive broader, laugh freer. Protect your peace like the salt protects the meat from rotting. Protect your dignity like the salt protects the sea from staleness. Protect your soul like the salt protects the covenant of time. And when you do, you will see what I have promised you, enemies undone, not by your hand but by their own. You will see them cry for mercy, not because you broke them, but because your unbreakable spirit revealed their brokenness. You will see them bow not to you, but to the truth shining through you. And you will know, in that holy moment, that salt has done its work. And when that day comes, whether it be in their tears or in your triumph, whether it be in their silence or in your song, remember to remain humble. Do not let pride spoil your salt. Do not let victory turn into vanity. Remain steady, remain grateful, remain human. For the purpose of salt is not to exalt itself, but to preserve and to season. Let your life continue to be a gift, not a monument to your suffering. Let your presence continue to season the world with dignity, not arrogance. Let your story continue to flavor the lives of those who come after you. For if salt loses its savor, it is good for nothing but to be cast aside. Do not lose your savor. Keep it, guard it, cherish it. And trust that as long as you do, no enemy, no betrayal, no wound can ever take away the taste of your greatness. So go forth, salted soul. Go forth, child of endurance. Go forth and let the world taste your integrity, your mercy, your power. Go forth and let your enemies see in your eyes the reflection of a person they cannot break. Go forth and let the earth itself be seasoned by your footsteps. Go forth and know that salt is not small, salt is not weak, salt is not invisible. Salt is eternal, salt is essential, salt is holy, and so are you. And when the day arrives that they cry for mercy, you will not need to lift a hand against them, for your very being, salted, steady, and strong, will have been the weapon all along. My beloved, there is a holy fire that rests upon the righteous when they learn that no weapon formed against them shall prosper. When they rise from the ashes of betrayal with salt still clinging to their spirit, a salt that purifies, preserves, and proclaims that they are not broken but blessed. When you scatter salt against the enemy, you are not acting in revenge, you are participating in a divine purification, declaring before heaven and earth that wickedness will not lodge in your home, that jealousy will not poison your well, that hatred will not find a resting place in your soul. You must understand, salt is both an emblem of tears and an emblem of triumph. It comes from the sweat of labor and the weeping of nights spent asking why. It is the symbol of survival itself. And when you use it with faith, you are not throwing minerals into the wind. You are testifying that you know God's covenant with you is everlasting, that your spirit will not rot in despair, that your heart will not grow bitter, but that you will endure, seasoned with His power. I must tell you, there is a peculiar power that comes when you walk boldly into the storm and sprinkle salt over the path where enemies tread. Not because the salt itself has strength, but because it becomes the language of faith, a silent prayer uttered in granules. With every crystal you are writing a declaration. You cannot cross here. You cannot invade my spirit. You cannot choke out my joy. And in that act you are stronger than your enemies could ever imagine. They may shout, they may curse, they may scheme behind closed doors, but when they step upon ground marked by salt, they step upon the reminder that heaven has heard your cry. And when heaven hears your cry, mercy does not belong to your enemies unless they bow before the same God who covers you. That is why some will fall to their knees, not because of your hand, but because of the unseen hand that shakes their pride, disturbs their rest, dries their tongue, and reminds them that you, beloved, are chosen. When you learn to use salt this way, you no longer tremble when others plot against you. You no longer waste your nights pacing the floor, asking what they will do, for you know the salt has spoken in your silence. It has carried your groans, your unspoken anguish, and delivered them into the courts of the Almighty. And God, who never forgets His covenant, will stir storms where necessary, will close mouths where necessary, and will bring even your fiercest enemy to the place where they cry for mercy, not because you cursed them, but because you reminded them of the covenant of protection that shadows your every step. This is why you must not be afraid to act. Fear will tell you to hide, but faith will tell you to sprinkle salt in your doorway, to scatter it at the threshold of your home, to carry it into the corners of your mind where doubt lingers, and declare, "This space belongs to God and no enemy has authority here." Hear me, beloved, this is not about superstition nor about magic. It is about the physical act of aligning with a spiritual truth. It is about reminding yourself and the universe that you will not accept corruption in your soul. Enemies will always appear, sometimes cloaked as friends, sometimes hidden in family, sometimes whispering in your own mind. But when you know how to use the salt, you are never without defense. You may walk into a room filled with envy, and they may smile with lips that drip poison. But if your spirit has been salted with faith, their envy cannot penetrate. They will gnash their teeth, they will wonder why their arrows bend, why their fire burns only themselves, and it is because you, beloved, are preserved. Salt does that. It keeps the good intact while letting the rot waste away. Some of you listening now know what it is to be surrounded by enemies. You know what it is to hear laughter at your downfall, to feel eyes watching, waiting for you to stumble. Some of you have tasted betrayal so bitter it seemed to poison your very breath. But tonight, I tell you, rise with salt in your hand and faith in your heart. Take what was meant to corrode you and let it preserve you. Sprinkle it where the shadows gather. Lay it upon the very places where your enemies hope to ensnare you. And when you do, remember, this is not your vengeance, this is God's cleansing. You are not returning their hate, you are reclaiming your peace. You are saying with every grain that you will not let darkness dwell in your light. And that simple act will make them restless, it will make them tremble. It will press upon their spirit until they cry for the mercy they never thought they would need. Do not think for a moment that mercy is weakness. Mercy is power. To make your enemy cry out for mercy is to show them that they are not in control, that the God you serve sets the limits of their reach. It is to remind them that you, the one they thought was fragile, are covered by a covenant older than their malice, deeper than their hatred, stronger than their schemes. When they beg for mercy, they admit defeat. When they cry out, they acknowledge that your God is bigger than their pride. And you, beloved, need only stand still and know that He is God. That is the beauty of the salt. You do not need to shout. You do not need to strike. You do not need to lower yourself to their level. You simply act in faith and heaven does the rest. Yes. There will be moments when you feel the sting of their words, when you hear the echo of their laughter, when you see doors shut in your face because of their lies. And in those moments, it is easy to let anger consume you, to want to fight with the same weapons they use. But I beg you, remember the salt. Remember that purity is stronger than poison. Remember that your tears, salty as they may be, are a prayer in liquid form, and heaven bottles every drop. Your enemies may think they won when they see you cry, but they do not know that every tear is a seed, and from it will grow a harvest of strength. You will rise with more fire, more clarity, more resilience. And when you walk back into the world salted with survival, your very presence will disturb the wicked. So I say to you now, do not run from your enemies. Do not hide in fear. Stand with salt in your hand and faith in your chest, and declare that this is holy ground. Let them come if they must, for they will not find you weak. They will not find you unguarded. They will find you preserved by the same God who has kept you through nights of sorrow and days of despair. And when they realize they cannot shake you, when they realize their weapons turn back upon themselves, they will cry for mercy. They will see that the one they mocked is untouchable. The one they sought to destroy is indestructible. The one they hoped to shame is radiant with glory. My beloved, salt has always been a sign of covenant, and you are the living covenant. Your life is the testimony, your endurance the evidence, your joy the proof. So use it boldly. Use it with reverence. Use it knowing that every grain you scatter carries centuries of survival, carries the prayers of your ancestors, carries the whisper of God Himself declaring that you are preserved, you are covered, you are chosen. And when you act in that knowledge, your enemies will crumble, their pride will break, and their tongues will beg for the mercy they never offered you. Stand firm, stand tall, and let the salt speak when your lips are weary, for it will never fail you. And your enemies will know they cannot touch a child of God. Beloved, there comes a moment in every life when the soul must rise up and claim its inheritance, when the heart must refuse to cower under the weight of enemy schemes and declare boldly, I belong to the Most High. There is a sacred authority placed in your spirit that no adversary can revoke, and when you recognize it, you begin to move differently. You begin to walk with a stride that shakes the ground. You begin to look upon your enemies not with trembling, but with an awareness that they are already defeated, because the one who called you has already declared your victory. And when you pick up that salt, when you scatter it before the invisible eyes of those who stalk you in silence, you are not simply seasoning the ground, you are summoning heaven's protection, and you are reminding the earth itself that you are covered. Each grain is a witness. Each grain is a voice, shouting louder than your fears, declaring that you will not bow to curses, you will not bend to gossip, you will not break under jealousy, you will not wither under betrayal. There is something deeply beautiful about the way salt lingers. It does not fade easily, it clings, it preserves, it endures just as you must endure. Life may hand you storms, and enemies may throw stones into your path. But when you know who you are, when you know whose you are, the storms become rivers guiding you towards strength, and the stones become altars upon which you testify. You may have enemies in the workplace, enemies in your family, enemies hidden behind masks of false friendship, but when you stand in your truth salted with God's love, every plan against you begins to unravel. For salt does not spoil, salt prevents decay, and you, beloved, cannot be spoiled by their plots, cannot be decayed by their lies, cannot be dissolved by their hatred. You are preserved, you are whole, you are chosen. Some will ask you, why use salt? Why believe that such a simple thing holds so much power? But you know the truth, it is not the salt by itself, it is the covenant it represents. It is the memory it awakens in your bones. The memory that says you were never abandoned, that through every season God carried you. that even when your tears tasted bitter with salt, they were gathered in his hands. And when you use salt as a weapon against your enemies, you are not practicing vengeance, you are practicing remembrance. You are saying, I remember who I am. I remember who walks with me. I remember that I am not alone. And in that remembrance you are unshakable. The enemy cannot touch a mind that remembers its own power. They cannot touch a heart that remembers its own worth. They cannot touch a soul that remembers its covenant. And so I tell you, rise up. Rise up and use salt in the places they thought you would crumble. Sprinkle it over your threshold and watch peace guard your home. Scatter it in the path of those who mock you, and watch their laughter turn into groans of confusion. Hold it in your palm as you pray and watch heaven descend to war on your behalf. For your enemies may appear strong, they may wear crowns of pride, they may wield weapons of manipulation. But when they come against one salted by God's promise, their strength becomes weakness, their crowns crumble into dust, their weapons shatter like brittle glass. They will cry for mercy not because of your hand, but because of the weight of divine justice pressing upon them. They will cry because they realize too late that you are untouchable, that your spirit is armored, that your tears have built a fortress they cannot scale. There is no shame in being pursued by enemies. Even the holiest have faced betrayal. Even the righteous have been stalked by those who could not stand their light. But there is shame in forgetting your own weapon, in forgetting that God has placed preservation in your very hands. Do not let your enemies rejoice over your silence. Do not let them imagine that you are without power. Stand and speak with salt. Stand and declare with your actions that you will not be a victim of envy or hatred. And as you do, the very ones who set snares for you will stumble into their own traps. The very ones who spread lies will choke upon their own words. The very ones who tried to bury your name will find themselves pleading at your feet, begging for mercy they cannot find anywhere else but in the presence of the God who shields you. Let your life itself be salted testimony. When you rise from the ashes of pain still shining with joy, that is salt. When you endure heartbreak and still love again, that is salt. When you lose everything they thought would break you and yet stand taller, stronger, wiser, that is salt. And your enemies will see it and it will break them. They will wonder how you survived what should have destroyed you. They will wonder how you kept walking when the road collapsed beneath you. They will wonder how your smile shines brighter after nights of weeping. And they will know, though they do not want to admit it, that something greater preserves you, something beyond their reach. That is when they will cry. That is when they will beg. That is when they will finally understand that you are marked, chosen, and untouchable. So take heart, beloved. The salt is in your hands, the power is in your spirit, the covenant is in your bones. Do not fear what men can do to you. Do not tremble at the whispers of enemies. Stand boldly and with every grain proclaim your faith, proclaim your survival, proclaim your strength. And know that as you do, heaven bends to hear you, angels surround to protect you. And your enemies, no matter how mighty they seem, will bow down, broken by the weight of your resilience, crying for the mercy of the God who has always walked beside you. You are not just surviving. You are preserved, you are chosen, and you are unstoppable. And as surely as salt seasons every meal, your faith will season every step, and your enemies will know once and for all that nothing can stand against a soul guarded by the Almighty.